All right, I'll go ahead and pray for us, and then we'll start our next session. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to just learn more about missions and about you. I just bless this workshop this morning, Lord. Help it to be beneficial. Help us to just grow through it and learn more about how we can serve your church. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, this afternoon, my topic is on online ministry, how you can integrate an online presence into your ministry profile. And I'll explain more about why I'm the person that's giving this talk and what my heart is behind it. But before we do that, raise your hand if you've ever seen any of those commercials where they're advertising for supporting animal abuse victims, and they've got the Sarah McLachlan music and stuff. How many of you guys have ever seen that? Cried, felt super emotional. I think there's another epidemic going on in our nation that needs some attention. While those videos are emotional and they can grab us, I think there's another epidemic that we all need to pay attention to. So if the sound guys want to go ahead and play the video. For adoption in the back, if you're interested, you can contact one of the people running the missions conference. Our topic is Rebooted, how you can integrate an online presence into a ministry profile. The reason that I'm so invested in this workshop and in wanting to share this with you is this last year during the coronavirus pandemic, this was kind of my life. So before I started doing residency with Midwest Church Extension, which I'd love to tell you guys more about, I did an internship in Alexandria, Virginia for 6 months where I was going to do youth group and I was going to preach and I was going to do all of these exciting ministry opportunities that involve lots of people and in close spaces and being part of the ministry there. And coronavirus happened. And so everything that I was planning on doing during that internship just drastically changed, and I ended up doing more of audio recording, video recording. I ended up doing a lot with social media involvement and just kind of being thrown into this ministry where that became my life. And so as I was talking to Henry about a seminar to do, he suggested to do something that involves online ministry and specifically how college students can help local churches get involved in their online presence. I talked to a lot of pastors just around the country who really, like the video said, they have no sound team, they have no video team, it's just them, and they spend hours every morning trying to get everything ready, and then they spend hours after Sunday's over trying to learn how to post things to Facebook and YouTube edit videos and make everything look professionally done. And so I really saw when I was, especially during the coronavirus pandemic, a need for younger people getting involved in these types of ministries. And I specifically think that college students could be a great benefit to the local church because honestly, you can use skills that you already have. When my pastor in Virginia asked me to start doing some of this stuff, I was a little bit taken back because I didn't really think of myself as the technology guy. I didn't really help with a soundboard ever, and I didn't really have very much experience with recording or anything. But it actually ended up being a perfect opportunity for me to help serve him and take stuff off of his plate because a lot of the stuff I ended up doing, I really knew how to do. So if you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any other types of social media, you already know how to do a lot of things that pastors really just don't know how to do sometimes. If you've ever, taken video and you know a little bit of how you can do that even on your phone, you already have some of the tools that you can use to help a pastor in ministry. So this afternoon we're going to talk about some different ways that you can be involved in local church online presence. So we're going to talk about social media, video recording, and graphic design. 3 areas. It's not the only ways you can be involved. If just technology isn't your thing and you don't know what a phone is, that's okay. You can be involved in some other type of ministry, but hopefully to be an encouragement to you guys who are college students here and then to people in other ministries as well. First, we're going to start with social media. And the principle here is that we should use our time, knowledge, and creativity to assist in helping our local church's social media page. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that especially as college students or younger people, you have more time to be involved in helping your church manage something like that. You probably have more knowledge than maybe your pastor does in helping run a Facebook page or some other type of social media page. You might have some creativity, some things that you can add to the table. And really when we think about social media, there's kind of 2 different camps that people can land on. You've got the people who are the social media butterflies. They're the people that are just on Facebook all the time, and if their cat stubs its paw or something, they're posting about it, and if it rains or snows, they've got thousands of pictures on there. I mean, they're just on social media all the time. And then you've got social media despisers. You've got people that either don't know what it is or don't want to know what it is, and they just stay completely off social media. And if you get anything from the seminar today, I want you guys to know that neither one of those positions is necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily a bad thing that somebody doesn't use social media, and if a church decides this is not the direction we're going to go in, that's okay. But if a church wants to have a presence online, that doesn't mean they're seeker sensitive, that doesn't mean they're necessarily wrong. But I'd say most of us in the room probably have some kind of balance. We have some kind of social media balance. Personally, I have a Facebook, I have an Instagram. I don't post anything really except for just kind of random things that are going on in my life and random things that are going on in the ministry that I work in. But all of us have some kind of balance between these 2 extremes. So just before we get into some of the tips and ways we can get involved in social media, I wanted to share my philosophy on what do I think a healthy practice, what do I think it looks like to have a healthy involvement in social media. First of all, use social media to communicate information and not to build an empire. I think social media can be a great tool to communicate announcements and different things happening inside of your local church. But social media shouldn't necessarily be used to build this online empire where you've got thousands and thousands of followers. I just think that can be dangerous. It's not wrong that a church has a big following. It's not wrong that they want to communicate information. But a church's health and success isn't based on how big their Facebook page is or how many views or likes they get on a certain post. And so use social media to communicate information, not to build an empire. Secondly, use social media to assist in discipleship, not replace discipleship. There's awesome tools you can use, articles you can post, different ways you can help the church get involved in discipleship by reaching out, by communicating events that are happening to them, by saying what times these certain events are, or even reaching out to people, asking how you can pray for them and you can encourage them. But social media doesn't replace discipleship. Some churches, their discipleship is through their Facebook page or their Instagram page. Some churches are just going to online church, or I saw one church that's called Home Church, where it's just church at home, and they've got several pastors that get on YouTube and they just try to have your church at home all the time. And while social media can enhance discipleship and encourage discipleship, it should never replace personal discipleship. And then lastly, use social media to promote prayer, not to gossip. You've probably all been on some kind of church prayer page where they're sharing requests and something happens and your nephew gets into some kind of trouble or something, and there's a fine line sometimes, and this doesn't just happen on social media either. There's a fine line sometimes between a prayer request and when you're gossiping about someone. And so use social media to promote prayer and not to gossip. Now, all of these I think can apply to a church, but I'd also encourage everyone personally, this is how I think you should practice social media. And I'm not trying to hate on people who are on social media all the time or who choose not to have anything to do with it. But if you're going to be on social media, you should still have some boundaries. You should still think about, how am I using this platform to glorify God? I think it's funny, just as I kind of observe and watch different people, how some of the things they would do and say on social media, they would never do in public. And just in our day and age with everything going on, I think it's a lot better when we can just be controlled and guarded in how we use social media. So how can you help? How can we help a church in their social media involvement? First of all, your time. Your pastor's busy. He doesn't have time to check on Facebook all the time, and it shouldn't really be his responsibility. Use time you would already spend on social media to help with your church's social media page. You can help post, update, manage your church's social media page. Use the time you already have to be involved in those things. Use your knowledge. Some pastors don't know anything about Facebook or social media. You can use knowledge you already have to help show them the ropes or to even take over that responsibility from your pastor. Now, I say all that, don't hijack your pastor's social media page without him knowing about it. So don't let him get on Facebook and you've posted all these little cute, verse gifts and stuff like that with kittens on them and stuff. Make sure he knows that you're taking over his social media page, or that you guys have at least talked about that. But use your knowledge to help him. Use your creativity. He might just need new ideas. He might need new ways for you to be involved. It doesn't need to be a weekly thing necessarily for you to do, but every now and then just pop in and say, hey, I think it'd be really cool if we use this type of announcement structure or this post, or polls have been kind of, I guess in the last year or so, it's probably been a little longer than that, people have used polls to kind of gauge who's interested in what, and those can be great tools that you can use and you can help your pastor with. Just a couple tips for how you can be involved. Schedule announcements. There's a great tool when you go to publishing tools on Facebook. This is something I think a lot of people don't understand. You can schedule all your posts in an hour. You can create them all. You can schedule them to post, and then they just post for you. You don't have to post anything, and you don't have to really worry about it. And this can just save people a lot of time. I think when they think about having a social media page, they think of just hours of constantly updating it to keep it active. You can do all that on a Saturday night or something. If you want to do that, go to Publishing Tools, create a post. There's tons of different things you can add to one of those posts. The second pro tip for using social media is just update your information. In the past couple years, I've looked at, it must be thousands of churches, from just looking for opportunities and jobs to the coronavirus pandemic, and just kind of peeking in to see what other churches are doing. And I can't tell you how many churches don't have the right location on there. They don't have the right phone number, if that's something your church wants to do. They don't have the right bio. Some churches have the pastor from 3 years ago who's not the pastor there anymore. And so you really want to update your church's information on Facebook if you want to stay active. There's just some really easy ways that you can do that. And then include recent pictures. There's some churches that I have on their Facebook page, I just have no idea what it looks like or where it is or who goes there. So if you're going to be active on social media, use recent pictures. Second way that we can be involved is through video recording. This will kind of play into social media as well. The principle for this is use your time and camera skills to help record live stream services at your church. Now, I'll start this by saying that not all churches do this. Not all churches want to record or live stream their services. That's not wrong, and we'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of churches are doing this right now because of coronavirus, and they're trying to find ways to record their services. And it's just kind of funny as I kind of peruse through Facebook. Some pastors have like a whole camera team, and they've got lights and everything, and it looks sharp. And then some pastors have their phone kind of staring up into their nose, and you can kind of see what's growing in there and stuff, and it's just really uncomfortable. And so I when I think about pastors in the video, like, I just feel for pastors like that because they're great guys, and some of them are just awesome dudes. And it doesn't mean their churches are small. Like, there's some bigger churches that have just pastors who just want to record it on their phone, but I just always want to tell them, just get a phone stand or something. Like, just get a phone stand or get a college student to hold the phone and record it for you. What are some different ways we can be involved in recording and live streaming? Well, I think there's benefits to both. There's people who just record their services and they post it later. That's not wrong. And then there's people who live stream it. My church that I worked at, we actually did both. So we did Facebook Live for a while, and then we went to pre-recorded messages where everything was kind of nice and edited and looked really nice, and we premiered it on Sunday morning. Then we went to live streaming again, and I think now they do a little bit of both. So there's some pastors who think, we're just going to record, we'll post the message, for next week or later in the week, and there's benefits to that. All your sermons are in one place. So people can just go there and they can listen to them. You've got time to edit them and kind of make them look sharper. So if there was something that happened, you can hide that, or you can take that part out. You have a nice finished product for people to see who are looking at your church. And then I think you place a greater emphasis on the gathered congregation. This is why I've heard a lot of pastors moving towards pre-recorded sermons and then posting them later. When we get into live streaming and stuff, sometimes it can be too easy to stay home in our pajamas and, drink coffee and just kind of watch church from home. And a lot of pastors are saying, we want to emphasize that you need to be here. And so we're just going to record and you can watch the service later. But if you want service at 10 or 11, you need to be in our building. That's not a wrong desire at all, but there's also benefits to live streaming. Those who physically can't get to church are blessed by being able to listen and watch the services. Honestly, I've just heard of so many, between all the churches I've been at in this past year, I've heard of so many people that have been blessed, that have been shut-ins for years, even beyond coronavirus, that have been able to watch and keep up with services from home. You might randomly connect with people that are just kind of browsing through Facebook. That actually happens a lot more than I thought would ever happen. In fact, I work at a church plant in Trafalgar, Indiana, and the pastor there is like, hey, I need you to lead music. And he's a great piano player, but he's been playing piano and singing, and so he convinced me to lead music, and he's like, it's only a church of 20, 30 people. No one cares if you can sing well or not. And so I thought, okay, this isn't going to be that bad. And then I was talking to one of the steering committee members there, and he said, yeah, there's just a lot of people that have been watching on the Facebook live stream. And I had no idea there was a live stream at all. And it turns out there's 80, 90 people that are watching this every week. And so there's these are people from just all over the place that he knows that are just watching this Facebook live stream that I had no idea about. So it's just interesting during this time. It might not be the best way to reach out to people, but it's a way that people are finding out about churches. We had somebody visit our church that found us on YouTube just randomly and was listening to Pastor Reed speak. Number 3, you don't have to edit anything. Everything is posted as it happens. If you've ever done any video editing, it takes a while, and once you start doing it, you don't usually want to stop until it looks perfect or pretty good. And so with live streaming, whatever happens, happens. And if it's good, it's on there, and if it's bad, it's on there, and you can just live with that. So there's benefits to both. Neither one is necessarily right or wrong. But how can we help with video? Whatever your church decides to do, with their video recording, here's some things that you can help with. You can man the camera. Some people just need somebody to sit and press the button and make sure people don't get in the way, and then stop it at the end. That's not super hard to do. There's been a couple Sundays where the camera breaks and something goes wrong, and so I just have to pull out my phone and hold it or put it on a phone stand or something. I would say most, especially college students, but a lot of just people in general can help their churches out by doing that. You can offer input. If your pastor has his camera looking up his nose or something, you can kindly and gently say, hey, if we straighten this out or if we put this on a phone stand, this might look a little bit better for people who are watching. You can help on lighting and camera angles and video quality. There's just tons of stuff that you can do to kind of just improve a little bit your church's recordings. And then you can upload the video. It takes a while, depending on what kind of Wi-Fi you have, it can take a while to upload videos. And so I can remember just, it'd be 1, 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and I would just kind of sit there making sure it uploads and making sure everything goes through the right channels. And your pastor, he's done everything else on a Sunday. It's already his busiest day. He doesn't really just need to sit there and watch this video upload before he goes and hangs out with his family. So it's an easy way for college students or just anyone to get involved. And then you can create the YouTube channel. If your church doesn't have one, it'd be a great way for you to reach out to people. They can see your pastor's sermons. Again, it's just a great outreach opportunity. There's lots of different ways you can design it. You can put little banners on there. Lots of different ways you can be involved on YouTube. Here's some tips for recording. Use a stand. The phone stands are not that expensive. You can buy like a little tripod and put it on a table. You can buy a full stand and stand it up in the back. You can order them on Amazon. They're just not that hard to buy. I can remember the first time I recorded my pastor giving like a little announcement about our church going virtual for a while. I was holding it, and I think I was breathing heavy or something because I was like holding it and trying to get it right. Somebody comments on Facebook, "Who's that guy breathing in the background?" And so after that, I'm like, we got to get a phone stand. And so we always used a phone stand after that. Secondly, you can edit your recording. I'm a Mac guy, obviously, so iMovie's free. It's like such a great resource. I've looked into tons of other video editing software. iMovie is just super easy to use. I'm not a super in-depth guy, so it's like easy for me to understand and follow. If you have a PC, the one that I've heard is really good is VSDC. I've heard it's free and that it's pretty good. The sound guys or somebody else could probably recommend something better, but that's the one that I've heard from my other friends that do this. That's pretty good. Lastly, check your work. I was recording announcements, and it was actually me talking, and I had a mess up. I mispronounced a word or something, and it was just obvious. And so I said in the video, I'll come back and edit that out later. We get to Sunday morning, and we're all sitting there watching during coronavirus, and I watched myself say that on the screen. Oh, I'll edit that out later. And everybody just kind of looks at each other like, wait, did he say that? And then all of a sudden, all the Facebook comments come pouring in about how the intern messed it up and how he kept that line in when he said he was going to edit it out. So just always check your work, write it down if there's a mistake or something. I was fortunate that it was just me that looked bad. I definitely wouldn't want to do that to a pastor or somebody else who was going to be on our video that day. Lastly, design. And the principle here is we can use our time and gifting to help design bulletins, PowerPoints, and other literature for our church. And this is something, I'm not a super artistic person in the sense that I can draw or write. My handwriting's pretty awful. But there's a lot that you can actually do with design that's pretty simple to do, and just a little bit of touch can go a long way in helping your church with some of their information. And so here's some different thoughts on, first of all, designing bulletins. There's some different templates you can use. I think I, later in the presentation, give a website you can go to download templates. But find a template. They're just so much easier to work from, just having that structure already there. Secondly, stick to the calendar. Put the information from the calendar into the bulletin. Don't try to get too creative and add all this different stuff, but try to keep it pretty simple. I think, especially as pastors like to believe that their church members scour the bulletins and they read every inch on there, and really they're just they're gonna open it and they're gonna kind of glance real quick, and so make sure it's nice and laid out well so that people can understand it, and then that you don't have too much information on there. Stick to the calendar. I've seen a lot of churches do a lot of cool stuff with their bulletins, but especially in the context that I work in, I don't think that any of the people at our church plant are really going to care if I put 3 or 4 paragraphs or just a couple bullet points about stuff that's going on. And then lastly, don't overcommit. When you start doing the bulletin, there can be a lot of stuff that you want to add, again, to try to make it look good, and that's not bad, but just make sure you can do it week after week after week. Secondly, designing PowerPoint. Sometimes less is more. I know pastors, and this isn't wrong, but they've got like 60 to 70 PowerPoint slides. And I was even at a conference one time where the pastor said, you need to use like 60 to 70 PowerPoint slides. And I just thought, that is just way too much. And he's spending 4 or 5 hours every sermon getting those ready and going through and checking those for spelling and grammar and stuff. I think less is more. In fact, I've seen some pastors who just have like 3 PowerPoint slides, the title slide, all their points on one slide, and then some kind of closing slide. I don't think that looks bad. I think the key to having a good PowerPoint is just trying to make it look good and having the quality sometimes over the quantity. Here's the other thing. So I've heard a lot of pastors that speak and they preach kind of using PowerPoint, and that's not bad. But and they've got like all these little memes and stuff in their PowerPoint, and it looks really good. But once you start doing that, it is very hard to get away from that. Does that make sense? Like, it's very hard to kind of get off of that train. And so some week you're going to be like, I just really don't have all the time to find these memes and cool videos and stuff. So just, you want to think about how can you help your pastor in doing PowerPoint slides. I would encourage college students, unless it's like your pastor's thing where he's just really good at it, I would say 90% of pastors I talk to, they don't want to be doing their own PowerPoint slides. But it's like everybody will volunteer to do everything else, but it's just that one thing that he kind of gets stuck with. So I'm sure he would love if you just even simply said, let me do your PowerPoint for you. Add some creativity. So saying all that with less is more, you can use some things to add creativity. So I made this PowerPoint with Canva. It's an online software. I like it because I can look like I know what I'm doing with graphic design and add in all these cool little cartoon stuff in there when I really don't. It just kind of makes suggestions and it gives me all the stuff that I can use. Microsoft PowerPoint has actually done a lot with like this design ideas stuff. You can click on that and it'll actually give you a lot of cool things that you can add to your PowerPoint that I think is pretty cool. The one thing with Canva, as the sound guys and I were figuring out today, is that sometimes it doesn't transfer super well from Mac to PC. So you definitely want to have some time to go through and check how it kind of spaces stuff out. In fact, when I first downloaded it, all my pictures and little cartoons and stuff were gone. So you just want to make sure you leave yourself some time if you're going to do something like that. And then check spelling and grammar. Just again, you want to make sure that your work looks good. Lastly, in design, some other ideas that you can do for your church. You can help design flyers or even create graphics for an event. On Canva, which I'll talk about more in a second, it's got all these different templates that you can use to create flyers, logos, bulletins, stuff like that, that you could use to reach out to people and have for an event. You can design gospel tracts for evangelism. There's different brochures or different ways that you can use that as a tool for outreach. And then there's even, I've never personally done this, but there's ways you can design banners and other kind of bigger things for your church. So if you have an artistic mind and that's just something that you are really into, your church, I'm sure, would love to have your input on some of that stuff. Just again, remember that you want to offer to help and you want to make suggestions. You don't want to become the dictator of your church's social media page or whatever they're doing. And then lastly, some additional resources, some things just for you guys as you're looking at getting involved in some of this. Canva. Canva is the site that I mentioned. Again, I think it's great. It's got a ton of just free stuff on there that you can use to design bulletins, PowerPoints, just a lot of different stuff that's really good. You can pay like $3 a month or something, or maybe a little more than that, and you can get like all of their icons and stuff for free. I've done that just because of how much I use it and all the different stuff that I want to do. For bulletins, this is the website that I found that I thought was pretty good. It's Concordia. It's got bulletins and bulletin covers and stuff. But your pastor probably has something he's already been doing for their bulletins. And then I put YouTube on there because in all the video editing and all of the other stuff, I knew how to do like literally none of that. So I YouTubed everything. I mean, you could go through my YouTube history, and it was just how to set up a live stream, how to set up a Facebook Live, how to set up YouTube Live, how to do this and that, and just, everything's on YouTube right now. That's just kind of where we're at with stuff. And so YouTube can be a great resource for just helping your church with live streaming and other things. That's all the information that I have. I know I said I wasn't going to ask any questions, but we've got a little bit of time. I didn't know if there was any, I don't know if we need a microphone. I didn't know if there was any questions. I know this is like the opposite of what I said I was going to do. But
could you explain what you just said?
Awesome. Any other questions?
Favorite form of social media?
My favorite form of social media would probably be, I probably use Facebook the most. The other thing that's going to be interesting is just what happens to social media in the next couple years with all the censorship and stuff. We could be talking about, some other type that only Christians can use or something. Or my seminar in a couple years could be how to use carrier pigeons to communicate information at your church. So it's just it's a crazy world, and I think social media is still going to be around, and I've talked to Henry, and I've said, I think this is the future, but I still am not super sure. The one thing I didn't talk about was website design. There's a lot you can do with that. I'm not like, a lot of the churches I've worked at have already had a great website. There's a lot you can do to help with your church's website as well. And I think the biggest thing is consistency between Facebook and YouTube and your website. You kind of want the same things on there. You don't want to have like one that has all the stuff and then the other one doesn't. So we have a lot of people at one of the churches I worked at that they used YouTube and they could access stuff on YouTube, but they didn't have a Facebook or anything. So if you post to one, you want to make sure that everything's kind of evened out. You don't have to have all these platforms, but if you have them, try to make sure you've got some consistency. And it's just always, we use Zoom a lot for prayer meetings and stuff, and it was up by DC, and a lot of military people just don't want to use Zoom for some reason. So you're kind of always having to think through what are people going to be okay with, and sometimes people just have interesting reasons for those things. That's like not really what your question was about, but Facebook.
How to start like a web page for a church, the first step would be to do that.
Yeah, the problem is I don't know. So I've helped with a couple churches' web pages. I don't know any like sites that I would recommend as far as like where to start one. I think the mission uses Final Web, don't they, Henry? Yeah, and that's been pretty easy to use, I think.
Our agency has my staffer is an administrative director, and he actually got certified with Final Web.
Yeah.
And so he's able to use a lot of their tools, and they've been able to do a lot of upgrading. And I'm hearing a lot more recommendations for those kinds of folks because they have so many templates that are already there.
Yeah.
And if they're doing their job of hosting well, they're also available for tech support and very readily. And we have found that to be true.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been impressed with it. Websites, again, I wish I had more information about websites because I personally go to websites all the time and look at information and stuff. And a lot of times if a church asks me to go preach there or something, I'll get on their website and on their Facebook, and I'll kind of already know people before I get there, which is a little bit weird because I'll be like, oh yeah, I saw you on Facebook. I haven't really met you yet. So that'd be all I'd probably have to add on websites. Any other questions, thoughts? Yes?
Not to be that person, but were the typos in the presentation purposeful for an object lesson?
No, some of it was from the way that Canva moved it over, and some of it is I just didn't check for spelling and stuff. So, no, I appreciate that. Any other thoughts, questions? All right. Thank you, guys. I think that's the last seminar for today.